Okay, so to prepare for my next video where I'm going to explain how and why we need an independent currency on the North Shore to fund all of our development needs and social costs, I want to blow open a few myths of the finance story of New Zealand that is sort of floating around. Okay, the first is that we effectively don't have any foreign debt. I sort of looked into the detail of this yesterday whilst talking to a financial genius, and we realised that if 93% or approximately 93% of our foreign debt was hedged, then hedging means effectively it's done under an old foreign currency sort of law in other countries. It effectively means that we can borrow. So we've borrowed. So right now, I'm looking at a report that says we were 93% hedged at March 2016. So that was when our debt was 111 billion. Now we are theoretically down to about 87 billion or 85 billion, but I don't know what percentage of that is hedged. But let's say because we've paid off the excess, all of that debt is hedged. It means that when we borrowed money off a foreign country, so let's say Japan, and then we left the money there in the account and effectively lent that money back to them again at a higher interest rate than what we borrowed. So effectively, we're making money of it. So it's a deal that, like John Key theoretically set up, a trading deal to make us money, make us maybe about 200 billion a year, something like that. So if the debt repayment means that all of our current foreign debt is hedged, we effectively have no debt. It just makes us money. Why not? Why wouldn't we accept that sort of a thing? In fact, why don't we take on more? Probably because, and why is it not made clear to the New Zealand public that we effectively don't have any international debt? I mean, is it being used as sort of a backing for then being able to create the money supply here? But I mean, that rolls into another level of stupid, because at the end of the day, effectively, I mean, it's a well-agreed fact, and a lot of bankers actually in the industry say this, that the banks effectively expand and create our money supply. And the reason is because when they create a debt, they immediately create a deposit simultaneously to that someone then goes and spends. And so through that, they create their balanced books, and they're not actually any longer requiring to secure savings from other people in order to pay, in order to extend a loan. So there's not savings that they're getting, then paying an interest rate on in order to lend on. Yes, they're taking savings and they're paying an interest rate on that, but what a lot of the bankers are saying is that that's not correlating to how much they're lending based on the fractional reserve banking system, which some say is not really truly in action, but explains the ability for banks to lend to multiples of what they have on reserve. So look, at the end of the day, here's the thing. If the banks are creating the money supply, then that further backs up Warren Mosler's concept or strategy that, in fact, there's no limit to what the government can spend on the public budget. And my policy that I published, 10 years ago and then have redrafted for this political run in New Zealand last minute, albeit someone said to me today, "Why aren't you advertising? We didn't even know you existed." And I'm like, it's fine. I have time. And there's always another election in 3 years, although I very much would like to be in Parliament this time around, but I've only got, a week and a half, 2 weeks left to try and persuade everyone and a fairly limited budget, so bear with me. But at the end of the day, there is no limit on what the government can spend. So, I mean, Mosler's example is very interesting. He says, the scorekeeper doesn't have points kept in a box somewhere that you can pull out in order to allocate the scores in a football game, and they don't need to keep those scores in a box somewhere so that you can limit or restrict what is a reasonable number of scores available to score on the football game. No, the scorekeeper just puts it on the board when it's earned in real time, real goods and services, reality. Okay, so the fact is that National effectively have us living under austerity measures when they have the power to generate the budget level to whatever they want it to be, because they are the scorekeepers. They put the scores on the board. They allow us our allocation of money. They set the rules. Okay, and the fact is that because they do that, tax has no relationship. They do not, because they print the money first and then give it to us. They don't need to collect it from us in order to spend it. There's no restriction like that, okay? So they can just allocate more that we will accept to exchange for real value at a reasonable level. Okay, so why are they not? Why do they have us under this measure of its austerity? I mean, it's effectively like they don't understand the system. The point is also with Labour, that's the other stupid. That's the other level of stupid. I mean, they are there, as we know, proposing the ETS tax, which is absolutely absurd. It's a fake tax. It misses the point of the fact that the industrialists are criminally and financially liable, or should be, for the cost of contamination, because it's mostly come from them. You could track back 90% of it to them. Not, most of the consumers who consume a little bit at the other end for no profit and actually pay for it have no real cost as to what kind of energy is offered to them, or what kind of fuel. They take what the market gives them, or what they can easily access in the network of distribution. Okay, so the fact is that Labour are trying to put up fake ETS tax. They're trying to crush farmers with water tax and carbon tax and gumboot tax and soil tax and raincoat tax and every other tax that they're going to pull out of the box when they get in, because they love to tax, because they don't understand the fundamental financial system, which is that you don't need tax in order to have government spending. Okay, that is just totally and completely false. What you need is to use tax only to regulate the economy. Okay, so when there's too much spending power out there and you're worried about inflation, then you're worried about the currency devaluing, then you up the tax so that then you can actually, you can make the economy less hot. So, right, effectively, you only need tax as a tool to control the economy. And the other reason you need tax is to motivate people to actually go out there and work so that they can earn what they then need to pay you. Because otherwise they might just sit at home, grow an apple tree and a banana tree and just sort of eat apples and bananas all day, as I've been doing today. So effectively there's no other reason you need tax. The governments do not need you to give them money so that they can actually decide what to spend in terms of what the people need. I read an article the other day saying that the traffic congestion problem for Auckland is not going to be solved. Like, the new bridge won't be built till 40 years' time. That's crazy. We can generate the money now to build the new bridge. In fact, my proposal is to build 2 plus an overpass. So the fact is that I'm not going to explain how that's going to happen in this video, but that is totally possible to happen with a little bit of innovation, vision and foresight. Okay, there's another issue that we need to address as well in terms of the foreign debt, just jumping back to that. The fact is that we do have a relationship with the IMF, and the IMF was, discussed back in Muldoon's day in the 60s as to whether we should join it or not, and then they did, and then they used all our gold reserves as security for the first loan, and then suddenly we didn't really have any gold reserves. I'd like to see the sale and purchase agreement for those gold reserves so that we know that the IMF didn't take them as security and then just tuck them away somewhere safe, and then suddenly we just didn't have them on our balance sheet, lost. Really like to check that that was actually funds received in return. Otherwise we should be asking for our gold back. But we do have a relationship with the IMF, apparently, and it's very difficult to read the charts. They're not explicitly clear. Apparently we have an allocation of 1.2 billion approximately we can spend, and looks like we might have spent about 830 billion, okay? And that's not much. We can pay it back. Why do we have it? When Muldoon expressed or, repeatedly didn't want to join the IMF, he said that it's a threat to national sovereignty. And I would say I totally agree, because at the end of the day, they are an international financial group of lenders or financial controllers, really, that are run effectively by bankers for the super wealthy, the wealthiest in the world, who try to generate opportunity to make money off populations, which is just effectively another form of tax or another risk of tax. So I honestly think that we should be the country that separates from that, pay back the 830 million, because that's all it looks like we owe, get out of it, see if there's a record of them actually buying our gold, or if they're just still sitting on it somewhere and we deserve it back, because it'd be probably worth $1 billion or $2 billion at this day, at today's rates. And sayonara, no more IMF problem, definitely no sort of IMF stories floating around, and hopefully with an increasingly independent economy, never ever a need to go back to them and lend or, take a loan or borrow. So we have no foreign debt. We owe the IMF such little money that they're just irrelevant to New Zealand, really, and we can pay that back and walk away, theoretically. Labour are trying to completely restrict our capacity to spend our money by overtaxing us to kill our economy and send us all into a far, and probably really inefficiently allocate that money whilst completely constricting our flexibility to live our own life and invest in our own solutions for our own problems, of which we all have many. So for God's sakes, Labour, leave us all alone. But the fact is, and that ETS tax, it just kills me. I mean, at the end of the day, that it just shows absolute naivety or a complete deception, a willing deception on the New Zealand public in order to restructure our entire economy based on the measure of carbon, which is what you breathe out and I breathe out, and the sea and the ocean breathes it in, and they make all our oxygen supply. So, not really the greatest pollutant in the world. Don't mention the fact that the Paris Agreement doesn't include carbon monoxide, which is the great pollutant spewing out the end of your exhaust pipe, and that's not being taxed, but our breath is. So try not to kill anyone today with your breath, because the Labour government are going to be sending you a tax bill. It's totally as realistic as it's getting. But anyway, so the ETS is one tax. But look, as I said, planning to crush the farmers with the water tax and a carbon tax and a gumboot tax and all that other sort of stuff, right? I love adding in the gumboot tax part, because that would be also realistic, when they have no need to tax you in order to secure the money that they can allocate as, literally numbers on a computer system to credit other people's accounts to spend on whatever we need. Okay, it's absolute stupidity. And as for National, putting us all on austerity measures to give, those of wealth and success in the country a tax break, and so all of those who need support, genuinely need support, and our systems like our healthcare system and education system, which genuinely need financing, are underfinanced, and people are suffering as a result. Education is an investment. National could double the education budget tomorrow and it would not make a difference, because the check and balance in the system is the supply and demand, what we're all willing to exchange for value. As long as we're all willing to exchange something for value, they put money in to pay teachers, and then, children show up, and it all kind of works around, without going into that big detail about how the economy works, which I'm sure you know. The fact is that there's no limit to what they can allocate in the budget. So, okay, the other irony of National, right, is the fact that they are proudly out there promoting their surplus. And everyone kind of thinks that sounds good, but what it actually means is that we have less money in our pockets to spend. So a surplus means that the government has effectively stolen our money or taken our ability through tax, through overtaxing, so taken away our ability to spend and create and invest in our own lives, and as I said, resolve our own problems, by overtaxing us. So then they're sitting on our money effectively. So it's not something I'd be proud of if I was National. I'd keep quiet about that. Or announce a massive tax break instead of announcing that they won't change taxes, because they do not, once again I say, need to tax us in order to get the revenue to spend on what the public needs for infrastructure and social investment and everything else, to have the economy that is the envy of all nations in the world. Okay, so I hope that's sort of blown apart a few myths on the financial system, and what one of my next videos will be about is the fact that my proposition to launch an independent currency, overlaying a complementary currency, effectively overlaying the existing New Zealand currency in the North Shore, so that we can demonstrate to all of New Zealand how the rules apply in a real and honest financial system. How we can build 2 new bridges and an overpass, how we can deliver all our social good, how, world-class mental health prevention, so, well, not mental health prevention, obviously, but preventing ill health in that area, empowering people, connecting them with themselves, teaching them how to think and how to be at peace and in connection with themselves, so that we have healthy minds and healthy bodies out there, and that we have everything we need. This is all possible if people can just conceive of the simplicity of what the money system actually is and how it should actually work for the benefit of us all. So what the probably takeout of this video is that the kind of people running our government through National and Labour are intellectually deficient or naive or disinterested in the financial system and how it really works, which is concerning considering what they're running is a financial system effectively for the entire country that dictates all of our quality of life. The poverty and the austerity, that's a choice. The government do not need to put us in that situation. That can be resolved immediately if the right party was running the country. But we'll have to save that till next election, because this time around I can only take a vote if you're registered in the North Shore and would like to see a new economic system that showed the world how New Zealand could lead the world in sustainable change, and innovate and think with our minds, as is totally possible to do, but it's not common in our New Zealand political system currently. If you want to see more, please do go on logic.org.nz to see some of our policies. Take a look further at some of the other videos on our Facebook page. Especially take a look at the videos on climate change and the legal arguments that are capable of holding the industrialists criminally and financially liable for the destruction of our environment, so that they're forced to transition their business models, and so that taxpayers are not spending $14 billion in the next 10 years, and goodness knows how much following that, to effectively let Labour and National hand over our sovereign control of our tax system. Okay, just as they've handed over sovereign control of our money system and don't seem to know how it works anymore. It's a problem. It's a very, very serious problem, and it's one I hope that I can win enough votes to work into a position where I can resolve it. Thank you. Have a good day.